reached out and asked if you had read the indictment. You said you read it word for word, page for page, right?
I did. I keep up. I love Jackson.
Even though they've not been in court and they've not been found guilty, it's just an indictment at this point.
They don't see it. My first statement was, think of your family. Think about your family. Put your family first.
I never thought in a million years we would have been put in the situation that we were in. Never. Because we went through our whole career doing the right thing.
It's utterly ridiculous to me. Utterly ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. And good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's edition of the Othor Cain Show. I'm Othor Cain. Glad to have you aboard on this Thursday evening, right? So I think that we've had an opportunity to kind of, decompress a little bit, right? To kind of take a step down just a little bit from the elections on Tuesday. But it is time to gear back up, right? It's time to gear back up. 3 weeks up until a runoff election. So we're going to bypass our first segment tonight and get right into our conversation with Mayor Lumumba, because we've got lots to talk about. So I'm honored to have him with us tonight. Mayor Lumumba, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening. Good to talk to you, brother. Had to run over here. We have people across the city who don't have power, and so we were trying to ensure that we could use many of our restaurants who were helping to provide food to them. So forgive the casualness, but
man.
Fresh off the streets.
You are absolutely good. Well, we appreciate you doing your due diligence for the citizens of Jackson. So, man, there's lots to talk about, and quite frankly, we want to talk a little bit about Tuesday. I would tell you this. I think that this race. I think that there are so many more than just two opponents in this race for this runoff election. I think you're running against the media. I think you're running against social media, traditional media. I think you're running against so many people, and I absolutely believe that being responsible is being able to have real conversations. Brother, I'm getting attacked like I'm running, but that's another story. But let's talk about Tuesday. Certainly, you made it to the runoff, but the numbers were somewhat disappointing to you, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you always hope to be at the top. So we would be dishonest if we didn't say that, right? But we are far from dismayed or defeated. To be honest, my father was in second place, not by quite as wide of a margin. And he did what we do best, right? He made his appeal directly to the constituents, directly to the residents. And there's no shortcuts in that. You talked about your attack from the media, from certain people based on, just trying to bring the facts to bear. Well, we've been dealing with a silencing for more than 3 years. I don't know if you recall, I won't say the individual's name, but there was a segment that I used to do every month with a local reporter, a well-respected reporter, where we would dive into major issues. And they would run it over the course of 3 days. And they cut that segment out because they told that reporter that it wasn't hard hitting enough. And that reporter told them, I'm asking the same questions you ask. I just give him an opportunity to explain. And so as I've been going into communities, I'm just leaving some community meetings tonight. I'm finding people who, when I'm having an opportunity to talk about the gravity of challenges and admit where there are shortcomings, right? They walk away with more information and greater understanding. And they're saying consistently, why haven't you told us, right? And so, while we were endeavoring to do it through the traditional ways that we've done it before, what we have to do is realize that when those avenues are shut out, then we just have to, go back to the basics. And so that's what we're doing.
Good deal. Good deal. Somebody made a comment. Let's hear about these reinforcements. You mentioned that word in your speech on Tuesday night. Let's kind of break that down. What do you mean by calling in the reinforcements?
Yeah, well, once again, I guess it leads from my last statement. We are grassroots at our heart, and so we're going to, make sure that we're not outworked. I've also had people who understand the severity of this election, not only how it impacts the city of Jackson, but national trends that have been going around. And so keeping an eye on that, and their concern not only for Jackson, but concern for these trends persisting, they've been chomping at the bit to come and join us, right? And so these are, just other organizers. They are mayors. I have a number of mayors from around the country that want to join and stump with me. And so those that can make it within this brief period of time, we certainly are welcoming them with open arms. But we're going to make certain that we are where we need to be.
Right. And when you used that term Tuesday night, I felt I knew exactly what you meant, right? You got to work. You got to put more boots on the ground. You got to get into the face of the citizens. A lot can happen in 3 weeks, right? A lot can happen in 3 weeks. I want to talk about just a couple of your challenges and how you've been able to overcome them. I don't think that as a city at large, I guess I would frame it this way, a city at large, that we really understand, and you and I have talked about this. In fact, we talked about it the last time, but I just don't think that people fully grasp the amount of work that you really did around our water situation. There was a lot of money that came in, and President Biden was the president, at the time, who really pushed it through. But again, that's based on relationships, and that's based on work that you did in spite of all of the challenges, right?
Yeah. Well, I saw one of the comments pop up. I peeked a little bit, and they talked about people outside. Well, the reason that it's important that some of these people be a part of this is because if you knew, even with that work, the relationships that help build the avenues to get support for the water system. If I take it back, I can tell you how I was a part of the Bloomberg Harvard Leadership Initiative. I was one of 40 mayors across the world selected to be a part of a leadership development summit where we took a year, studying issues, studying leadership training, a number of things. And one of the people that I met in that process, or I actually had a relationship before, but was Mayor Randall Woodfin. Also met Mayor Stephen Benjamin, who later became a senior advisor to President Biden. And at the time, Bloomberg had made it clear through one of his aides that he was considering running for president. And we sat down and he wanted to talk to the three of us. He wanted to talk to myself, Randall, and Mayor Benjamin. And so we caucused and we talked about not just being a part of a photo op, but establishing a Southern mayor's agenda. And we said that we may not all endorse the same candidate, but we will all agree that we won't endorse any candidate that does not support the agenda for our communities. And so what that led to was Jackson and other cities being a part of the political process in a way that we had never been before. If you remember, Elizabeth Warren did her town hall in Jackson, right? Bloomberg came and did a caucus here in Jackson on criminal justice. Biden certainly came through, and we were receiving calls from all of those candidates, and we were in the national conversation. So those relationships were important as we came to the challenges of our water system. And so we not only worked with our delegation, and I'm grateful for their support, probably more support from the universal delegation than people may know, right? But I won't, get into the specifics of that. But I will say that we met every Friday. Every Friday morning, we talked and, went through a game plan and who we were going to communicate with, right? Who was going to be on first, who was going to be on second. I traveled to Washington several times. I went and spoke with Senate appropriation staffers, and I made a case. I laid out the issues within the water system and why we needed such a significant contribution to our water system. I told them why loans did not work, that we were a city beyond our debt capacity, and that would not suffice in terms of getting us out of the issues that we have in Jackson. And so, I spoke with President Biden directly and Vice President Kamala Harris in several meetings with Administrator Regan and also the infrastructure czar, Mitch Landrieu. And they all came together and said, listen, we have concern over the discriminatory funding that does not come to Jackson by the state of Mississippi. And we have to find a way to get you that money directly. They recognized, to their credit, and with a humble spirit, that there was a good likelihood that they would not control both the House and the Senate during midterm elections. And so what they made the decision to do was very unique, and the first time in United States history, is that they delivered $600 million and another $200 in direct appropriation through an end of the year omnibus bill before the new office holders for the new legislature the new Congress would take seat. And they thought that it might be virtually impossible for that money in order to make it to Jackson because of gridlock and dissension in Washington. And so it was a very elaborate, plan. It was very thoughtful. And, for those that, my opponent has said that make no mistake, the federal government took the water system because they did not trust Jackson. That's furthest from the truth. In fact, it was the charges that were against the state of Mississippi, a Title VI complaint that was against the state of Mississippi for discriminatory funding that the state looked at. And so typically when there are issues like Jackson has had because of our lack of funding, the state health department takes over water systems and they control. And very uniquely, what Administrator Regan shared with me, he said, the only way that I can stop them from taking you and my concern over whether they would treat you right is if we take it over. And so we entered into an agreed order of consent for that to happen. People don't know, I tell people that I'm the biggest, I want Ted Hennepin to be successful because I brought Ted Hennepin here through the U.S. Water Alliance. The U.S. Water Alliance, who works globally, looking at water insecurity challenges across the globe, came and met with us and brought us engineers and experts in water distribution to not only talk about a strategy of how we would deal with the challenges and map out a plan and express to Senate appropriations what the deficiencies in our water system was. But they also, developed a plan that would enable us to build a path forward. And so when we were in the heat of the August, few years ago, August emergency, it was them that brought a lot of the experts, along with other people, the state, the FEMA and MEMA and all of them brought different people. And so when they did that, what came out of it is a lot of people were lifting up the work that Ted Hennepin was doing. And they recommended and suggested him to me. And so that's how we agreed for him to take over and entered into that agreed order of consent. And, there were people raising concerns in the process within community, questioning, the work he was doing. And I told him very clearly that we need to give him a chance, right? That we can't be at war with everyone. And we have to make certain that we give him a chance in this work. And other concerns lifted up, and we only lift up the concerns of community because residents are concerned that there's an effort to raise their water bills another 25%.
Right, absolutely.
After an availability charge was just implemented on them, a higher availability charge was just implemented last year. And so they deserve to know.
So what's that dollar figure? It was 8 million or a little more than that. What was that amount that you were able to negotiate and get into?
Yeah. So with the combination of the omnibus bill and direct appropriation, it was $800 million in total. It was $600 million within the omnibus bill. 150 million was to go to administrative costs. Another 450 was to go towards, immediate programs like, dealing with the replacement of pipes, actual infrastructure work. And then the other 200 was dedicated to, various needs within the distribution of our water.
Very good, very good. I really wanted to underscore that because again, Biden was the president during this, right? And so I just don't want people to get confused. I do want to I want to address Greg's comment. Greg was said exactly say out-of-state volunteers, and I think you get volunteers wherever you can. It really is about relationships, right?
Yeah.
And it's about people that support you in state or out of state. I think it's good. It's good.
And that's not to say that we don't have several in-state volunteers, right? I was on a corner with 18 people just yesterday on one corner, right? So we have a number of people that are concerned for their city, that are working hard with us, but it's that serious. And not only are Jacksonians concerned about the future of our city and what it will mean, in the context of our nation, so are people around the world in the country.
Got it. I think you're absolutely right. Let's get a couple of comments in. So I want you to address Edwina Cooley. She said, or Cully, Jackson, Mississippi has become an eyesore. Sir, what is the plan? Because Jackson looks like a ghost town. And I think that's a fair question because people want to know how do you provide or move progress for the city?
Yeah. Well, I think that question addresses a number of things, right? Part of that question I would see in dealing with blight and challenges like that. While we have demolished, well over, 100 structures in the city of Jackson, we've created the first commercial demolition, getting rid of properties like Casa Grande in South Jackson, many hotels that were demolished on Ellis Avenue. The one that's remaining that was not the city's fault, but we'll go into that later on, right, in terms of the rubble. On Meadowbrook or Briarwood Drive, the old pie-shaped building, for lack of a better word, and of course Hotel O, creating the first commercial demolition. While we've been aggressive in that, I've always been clear that we're operating in a broken process based on state law and the loopholes that exist in terms of the title clearing process, in terms of the environmental court process that we have to go through. All of that makes it far too strenuous on a city and cumbersome for us to do. And so we have been consistent while we've worked within the system that we have available to us. We've gone to the state legislature each and every year in order to ask for land bank legislation. Land banks have been the most successful nationally in terms of getting rid of blight. It gives community power and access, because while someone may buy a property in your community because they're speculating, meaning they purchased it at auction for the lowest of prices and are waiting for something to come to see if they make a return on their money, they don't live in your community. They don't deal with, the condition with the grass being grown up or, the roof falling in or even the unhoused, occupying the space. And so by having a land bank, those that are living in and around that have more access to the decision-making in that process. And we think that is far more effective, right? But we've been working aggressively. In terms of investment, though, right? In terms of economic development, you have to understand what South and West Jackson are considered, right? They are not considered communities that are investor-ready by banks, by lending establishments.
Right.
And so they are reluctant in order to loan people money, developers per se, for the projects that we want to see in those communities, because they have questions about whether they will see a return on their money. Most cities in circumstances like that have the revenue or the funding in order to supplement development or bring them across the goal line. The city of Jackson has not had that money and not had those resources available to us. And so one of the ways that we have pursued more money is through affirmative litigation, meaning no longer just being a city that is sued, right? But being a city that sues bad actors and gets money. And we've been successful in several cases. And so now we're taking the money that we've recouped in those cases in order to apply to a revolving loan fund. That means that we can help, fill the gap with developers when they don't have the complete capital stack in order to invest in our community in the areas that we need it most. And so that's what we're going to do. We're also leveraging our Grand Gulf Fund, which we get money each year. It is payment in lieu of taxes that is given to several cities that are serviced by the nuclear plant that is south of us. And so we're taking that money and leveraging so that we can spend money specifically around the Highway 18 corridor, specifically in South Jackson. The last thing that I'll say about economic development is people tell you things like, well, the city is going to incentivize. I'm going to give tax deals and benefits. The reality is that, the city gives TIFs in almost all circumstances or many circumstances. Right. But if the developer does not have the capital to get the project off the ground in the first place, then a TIF which provides money on the back end is not beneficial to those projects.
Got it. Let's take a question from Adrian Coleman. She said, question is, why is Thalia Hall still closed? And I'd like to just compound that. What's the status and where are we headed?
Yeah. Well, in terms of the main structural challenges that needed to be dealt with, right? Those have been remediated. And, there are few remaining things that really should not stop the programming at this point. They will be installing a fire curtain, but they have a process around that. They merely have to have fire personnel on site in the event that, a fire were to unfortunately break out until that fire curtain is done. But here's the bigger issue. There's been this narrative that the city of Jackson has been sitting on its hands after state provided funding. First, ask yourself the question, how did the state come to provide funding for Thalia? It was because the city made the needs known for Thalia, and then there was an allocation to deal with it. Now, this is the difference between policymakers and policy implementers. When the money is given by the state or a bill is passed, we don't get that money day one. It has taken nearly a year for that money to come to Jackson. Once the money comes, then we have to have architectural designs from the money created. Because when we're putting chillers in the city, when we're doing new elevators or doing any number of the things that have to be done, we don't go to Home Depot or Lowe's to get those things. They have to be specifically designed for the city of Jackson. After those designs are made, then we have to go through a bid process where we have to bid out to contractors to see who has the lowest and best bid in order to do the work and all of the procurement. So sometimes the work takes a lot longer, but it's not because the city of Jackson has not been active or engaged, but because, bureaucracy just happens to be a little long, ensuring that we get the lowest and best price. And so this whole notion that the city has sat on its hands is a farce and is inaccurate.
Got it. But then that begs the question: how did it get in this condition? Right? Yeah. How did it get to this point?
Yeah. Well, the reality, as we've been asking for the money for quite some time, Thalia is an older building, right? It is older than me, in fact, right? And we have been making repairs. We've invested millions in Thalia each year. So that you see the repairs that we have at this moment in time, but all of the repairs that we had to do to restroom facilities and all these things just to be open for IBC, right? Doing emergency contracts and making sure that we got the work done in order to house that work. And so Thalia has been a declining building like many of our other age buildings for some time, which means that you have to work on it time and time and time again. The other issue is this, right? Is that we have to have a real conversation about those that we partner with to put on events and make sure that we have an appropriate scale of fees to make certain that not only that they can be profitable, that they can bring events and shows, Broadway and whomever want to come here, but also we have enough cash flow that we can have routine maintenance of Thalia Hall. Now, to be clear, Thalia Hall has had its most profitable years under this administration. I would not say that it has reached its pinnacle of how profitable it can be, right? Because we want to make certain that we're taking advantage of concessions in a greater way. I'm not talking about popcorn and nachos. We're in Jackson, Mississippi. We should be doing dinners, right? We should be doing things that people enjoy and engage, and they have a unique experience, right? So we've continued to make investments in Thalliamara Hall, and might I add, right, because we're talking about investments in our entertainment and cultural arts. We forget that right next to Thalliamara Hall is the multi-million-dollar investment in the only planetarium within our region, right? Which we've gotten off the ground. It will be a state-of-the-art planetarium. I liken it, looking at the renderings, you'll feel more like you're on Star Trek, right? Than the old planetarium, even in how the doors open. And we're doing that to educate our children, but we're also doing that in order to create more revenue for our city. And so, the city of Jackson has been looking far and wide at opportunities for investment, creative economy. And so while we're investing in Thalliamara and working on that, we want to create a more state-of-the-art experience there, different lighting and all of these things, but we have to change the fees. We're also doing it again at the planetarium and bringing other cultural events, right? We are the recipient of the National Folk Festival, which brings about 100,000 people each year to the city that is selected. We are the recipient for 3 years. It has also left in its wake more legacy events that last long after the folk festival has left. I know folk is a little confusing. People think of folk music. It's far more than that. It's actually a festival surrounding America's music. So it's everything from folk to jazz, hip hop, indigenous music, but it brings people from all across the globe. And so our effort is to take that and reestablish Jubilee Jam, which residents have been asking for many years.
That's good stuff. Last question on Thalliamara Hall. Are plans being laid to try and get some of those events that move to other venues since it's been closed? Are plans being laid to pull them back in once it's back up and running?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been working with partners. Now, here's the reality. There's, I've heard somebody on the campaign trail say the city's losing millions. First of all, that you say that when you don't know the numbers. The city doesn't bring in $1 million on Thalliamara Hall a year, right? Unfortunately, and that has to do with our scale of how we, of how the revenue is split. And institutions like Thalliamara Hall, which you don't realize in the center itself, you realize in terms of people shopping in your city, going to restaurants, paying for parking, just like a convention center, not only in Jackson, but in most cities, don't turn a profit. They are merely an economy stimulant that leads to people staying in hotels in your city and bringing up the revenue. That is why the hotel and restaurant associations have such a heavy influence over who are selected on those boards, is because that is who the impact goes directly towards. Lastly, I would say is that the work that we've been doing on Thalliamara has in large part been during the off season of Thalliamara. Each year, when it gets colder, there are less activities at Thalliamara as any auditorium because those events don't travel as much when the weather is not as conducive to it.
Got it. Mayor, let's talk a little bit about crime. I got to tell you that I was very critical of James Davis as chief, but I think that you scored a home run with Joe Wade. I think Joe Wade provides the city with the level of comfort and trust that had largely been missing for a while. So kudos to tapping Joe Wade. We really do appreciate that. But can you just talk to us a little bit about crime in the city and how your administration is working with JPD to kind of really get a handle on it?
Yeah. Well, first, let me say that one murder in our city, one family harm by the effects of violence is one family too many, right? I'm no friend of crime. My brother was shot in the head here in Jackson, Mississippi when I was a young child, right? So I know how families feel, the devastation that they experience. My brother was shot on the corner of Poindexter and Lynch Street. I never passed the street without thinking about it, right? So I certainly understand. But we also have to be certain and ensure that we don't allow anyone to control our narrative, because it is clear. It is clear by any metric that violence, not only violence, but property crime in totality, has been going down the last 3 consecutive years, right? And so we have to recognize these gains, not to say that we're satisfied, not to say that people still shouldn't be concerned about violence that they see, but to be encouraged that if we're seeing gains, then we can continue on this path and have greater success. But here's the reality of our administration. And I challenge anybody, ask Joseph Wade, ask Chief Davis if you know him. There has never been a request that our police chief has asked that I haven't met, right? Anything that they've asked for, I've delivered. To wit, we've given them 2 pay raises within the last year alone, right? We've given them new SUVs. We were the first administration to provide SUVs to our police department. It had never been done for the actual patrol officers to have SUVs. We've given them 21st century technology. We've given them the real-time command center. We've purchased laptops to go into their vehicles so that when someone passes one of those cameras, or when they pass one of our license plate readers with a stolen vehicle, it will alert there and it will alert to the officers so that they, don't have to search for people or run every tag to see if somebody is in a stolen vehicle. It will tell them who it is and where they are, right? So that we can respond in real time. We've given them body cameras to not only support officers when people may imply that they did something incorrectly, but to give more transparency to community. So we've supported all of these requests. And at the same time, what we're saying is that it doesn't have to be an either or proposition. Either we fund police or either we fund preventative measures. We've given the police what they've asked for, but we've also searched for outside resources with entities like the National League of Cities and Wells Fargo Bank. We start working with leadership from our health sector, our hospitals, because we understand that they have a vested interest. When somebody comes to the hospital with a bullet wound, they come because they have trauma, not because they have health insurance. And so there's a strain on our health insurance sectors. And so we want them to be partners with us in supporting this violence prevention. What does that look like? We're supporting organizations like Operation Good, which is a cure violence model form of violence interruption, right? Where they set down roots in community and establish relationships and diffuse conflict that's taking place. We're working with Strong Arms of Jackson, which is a credible messenger form of violence interruption, where people who have gone through the judicial process, who have been convicted and understand many of the pitfalls that our young people find themselves in, people who used to be the problem, we're now supporting them to be a part of the solution because they have committed and gone through training and demonstrated a desire to do so. We're also working with Living with Purpose, which we're working with Judge Carlin Hicks with the Living with Purpose program, which goes directly in the juvenile detention center, and it finds young people who have cases against them, and it's working with them to make certain that they don't become the next shooter on the streets, right? So if a crime happens, then there are consequences for that. There's a police department that will respond to that. But if the police are called, then it has already gone wrong. And so we're making those investments. And then lastly, we're trying to open up Mary C. Jones again. We're making investments in Parks and Rec. I want to be clear because I want to give our brother kudos. We've been working and communicating with Monte Ellis in Georgetown so that we can build 2 state-of-the-art basketball courts. They're rubberized basketball courts with glass backboards with his name on the court, because we want them to understand who's invested in them so that we can have recreational activities that young people can be engaged in. But we're also trying to open up Mary C. Jones as a youth engagement center. Instead of this age-old question of create a curfew. Othor, here's the reality. Curfews don't work. The reason that it doesn't work is because if we detain them, where are we taking them to? Are we going to take them to the youth detention center, which is at its capacity with young people charged with adult crimes? Right. We can't release the young person charged with assault and put the one in that's been out past 11, right? And so with these youth engagement centers, what we want to do is bring young people who may be out past a concerning hour or exhibiting other issues of concern and we'll have them staffed with social workers and psychiatrists, right? And have an element of JPD there just in case something concerning were to take place. We want to triage. We want to understand why they're out, right? Instead of acting like a carpenter with one tool, a hammer, so everything looks like a nail. If there's a young lady who's suffering sexual assault at the house and she's out because she doesn't want to be harmed, then we certainly don't want to send her to a detention center, right? We want to understand what's going on. And so we're making these investments, right? We're thinking very critically and very deeply about how we respond to violence and crime and issues in our community.
That's really good. I want to pop up Terrence's comment, but I'm going to couch it because I think that there's this misnomer in the community that the mayor and his administration has a how do I say it? As it relates to Jackson Public Schools, I think there's a misnomer that the inner workings of the school system comes from the mayor's office, you know, and I will also say this, you know, JPS has made a significant turnaround, right? The letter grades is probably just a couple of points away from a B, and it would be a B had we not had the most recent infraction as it relates to testing. But we are at a very strong C, and that means that no charter schools, no additional charter schools can come into this city. So JPS is not in bad shape, and I don't know where people are or why people are pushing this narrative. But Terrence asks, what is the plan to improve Jackson Public Schools to make it more attractive for families to move to Jackson?
Yeah. Well, Othor, you're absolutely correct that the city, the mayor nor the council has, you know, direct authority over the investments that or the work at JPS. Now, I do appoint school board members, right? And I will say,
you've appointed some really good ones.
Yeah, and you know, I will say that this administration, out of necessity, right, has been the most engaged with Jackson Public Schools than any other administration, right? I meet with the superintendent. We have breakfast on a routine basis, right? Where we talk about his challenges, what he needs from the city, public safety concerns within our school districts, and how we'll work to address them, how we're sharing information as it relates to public safety matters. We do all of those things, right? But here's what we have to be clear on. Sometimes we look at the state or the condition that we see in our schools or even in our communities, and our expectation is looking at what optimal performance looks like, right? While you deserve that, while that is where we are going to go and where we're headed, we have to understand that that doesn't happen overnight. And so you have to have these benchmarks of success. You have to be able to walk yourself and have a annual plan of where you expect to be. And so that's why JPS has been able to make tremendous strides. If you want to talk about JPS, let's talk about them fairly. As we stated, you had a school district when we came in that had received consecutive failing grades. And those failing grades, because I know this has been a sore spot for community, and I understand not only nostalgia, but concern about what is in their community. That failing grade wasn't just merely about concerns over curriculum and instruction. It was about facilities. Jackson Public Schools has the third largest school district in the state of Mississippi. We still maintain the largest facility footprint in all of Mississippi. And so those other districts have far fewer facilities to maintain, a far lower overhead in order to provide quality education. And so there were always going to be critical decisions made within the closing of some buildings.
Absolutely.
And what has complicated that even more is what you just said, Othor. Because they have a C, you don't see any more charter schools. But understand what charter schools do to JPS. It robs the public coffers. And be very clear, the charter schools have been performing worse. I'm not speaking of everyone, but by and large, the charter schools have been performing worse than JPS.
Right. As they have around the country, if we're honest.
Yes. And what happens is when a student leaves JPS and goes to a charter school, JPS has to issue a check to that charter school, which covers the cost allocated for that child.
Correct.
If the child is kicked out of the charter school and returned to JPS in the same school year, the money doesn't come back to them.
That's not.
And so JPS still has to facilitate the same educational plan and opportunity for that child, even when it does not have the money. And so when we see the decline, not only in enrollment, we have to understand the contributing factors that lead to that. And I will be the first one to boldly say that I think that Dr. Eric Green is doing an outstanding job.
Absolutely.
Does that mean that community, that he's making decisions that everyone likes? Absolutely not, right? Sometimes the choice you have in leadership, I'm gonna be honest with you, Othor, is the decision between a bad decision and a worse decision, right? Yep. That's what's offered to you. And so he's making very difficult decisions, but he's all doing it in an effort to save and rescue our district. It's not, when a superintendent comes, he doesn't expect to be having charrettes and think tanks with community over economic development, such as he's done around, Lake Hyco, right? That shows somebody who's vested in community, who's concerned about the outcome, not only of our educational system, but the outcome of community.
Absolutely, absolutely. I could not agree with you more about the job that Dr. Green and his team is doing. I also know firsthand that you were on the front lines when the district was under a threat for takeover. You were right there because I was there standing with community, and you were right there as well. And you're right, Dr. Green has made some tough decisions. You're absolutely right. About the number of buildings that were open. He had to close them because it just did not make financial sense to keep those buildings open. But let's move on. I want to take G5's point because I know you have something to say here. He says, he or she, I don't know if it's a male or female. Mayor, how do we pivot for resources outside of state and federal governance when resources are withheld, when we refuse to give up certain assets they seek to control?
Yeah. Well, be clear. I think you have two very clear and diverging opinions of how to move this city forward, right? You either have the opinion that, if your plan is for someone else to see value in you, I don't believe that's a plan. You have a wish list, right? And so you not only look for diplomatic opportunities and operational unity to convey the message of how supporting the city of Jackson actually supports the state of Mississippi, but you also have to establish other relationships. I told you about the deep thought that went into even the presidential cycle, right? I will remind you that when I started in this office, I started under a Trump administration, right? We were able to recover things because there are relationships that I wouldn't tell you I had, right? Because by telling you, it may destroy the opportunities that exist within those, right? Or you have the alternative that, just one more big concession of the city of Jackson. If you just give up your airport, if you just give up your water system, then we'll finally treat you right. We've been having this trickle down analysis of what needs to happen in our communities for far too long. For those that are critical about the Jackson Zoo, yes, the Jackson Zoo needs money. Yes, the Jackson Zoo has problems and needs investment. And the reality is I'm not so staunchly opposed to moving the zoo as I am staunchly opposed to divesting in a community even more with nothing but a promise of something to come in the future. We just had a conversation about blight. We just had a conversation about Jackson looking like a ghost town. And so this whole notion that we just move a zoo as if we get two men in a truck, right, and move the zoo from one side of town to the next. It will take hundreds of millions of dollars to move the zoo. And I simply believe if we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, then that community is just as worthy of that investment as any other community. I can tell you that we were a part of the conversations about having Top Golf in Northeast Jackson, in that same property that people are talking about the zoo. I can tell you through my relationships with people like Mayor Rhodes that you wouldn't know that I have a relationship with, because we've gone to Washington multiple, countless times at this point. I can't even remember how many times we've gone to Washington together for issues that we share between our borders, right? And that relationship has extended in a way that, knowing that he served on the Wildlife and Fishery Board, I was able to go to him and say, listen, we're trying to get a big development here. And I was able to get a straw poll from him and other members of the Wildlife and Fishery Board that were willing to give a long-term lease to Topgolf, a top 5 development in the United States that brings not only Topgolf, but other retail establishments alongside it. And they were interested. There were other people, state leaders, that were against it because it wasn't the vision that they had for that area of town, right? And so we lose opportunities because we can't come to an agreement. I've supported. Here's the thing that gets me. There are very few things that have been requested of me with regard to the most affluent side of town, Northeast Jackson, that I haven't supported. When they wanted support for the walking trail, I supported it, right? I didn't stand in the way. As they've told me that they want to create a bridge that goes over Lakeland Drive that says LaFleur's Bluff, so it connects the Museum to Market Trail to the Agricultural Museum. I've said, that's fine. Let us do it, right? And for them to stop Topgolf because they say, well, we don't like the way that the nets will look. Not that it will interfere with the walking trail, but we don't like the visual of nets when people are on the walking trail. Jackson is a city in need of investment, right? And we have to get out of our own way.
I agree. And man, I'm telling you, these are the kinds of things that the community needs to hear, right? Because they lay the blame at your feet. They have no idea what goes on behind closed doors and the conversations that you're having. These are the things people need to hear. With that said, I will pull up Martin White's company. He said, with all of these good things that's happening in the city, it needs better promotion and awareness, letting the public know. We will take great pride in these accomplishments.
Yeah.
How will you respond to that?
Well, I appreciate it, Mark. I appreciate that statement. And first, let me take some onus, right? I think coming out of the struggle of COVID, which separated us in so many ways, I think it's been tough to re-engage with, in-person community meetings. And that's been on both sides, not only me being at the places that I should be more, after chasing money, trying to go to these places. Look, some people want to know why I take trips, because if the money ain't here, I got to go to where the money is to bring it in for the city. Places like DC or when Bloomberg asked me to be a part of something at Harvard, when he's given millions and millions and millions of dollars to Jackson, I have to do it. But I will accept that I should have looked at an opportunity to have more community forums to talk about this. What I was using was trying to use the microphone of the mayor's office that is usually available, right, to talk about these things. That's why I have a press conference every Monday, right? You may only get a snippet of what I say, right? But I'm often talking about all of these things that I'm saying now. It hadn't been for a lack of saying them. It's been for a lack of viewership or a lack of you having access to the things that I've been saying. I would remind you again of the conversation that I said I had with a well-respected reporter, where they ended the segment that reporter had because they said it wasn't hard-hitting enough, right? And that reporter said, I'm asking the same things. But that was an opportunity where whatever was the conversation of the day, I don't believe that 3 minutes on a city council microphone equals community participation. And so we have to find and construct new and additional ways of engagement.
Exactly, more creative ways to get your message out. I have a pretty good idea who this was that you were doing the segment with, and
don't say it. Don't say it.
I have a pretty good idea, but I will say though that it seems like they are campaigning against you. I would say that. That's how. Yeah.
Well, that individual isn't campaigning against me.
No,
but
not
the station is.
The entity. The media
the station
outlet,
is.
Right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
The station is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I listen, we can either think this is all coincidence, right? It is coincidental that they're trying to take your airport. It is coincidental that they're trying to take your water system. It is coincidental that they're trying to take Smithville Stadium. It is coincidental that they've muted me on the television. It is coincidental that the Northside Sun can write an article that calls all Republicans in the city of Jackson to vote for John Horn, right? You can either think that those are all coincidences and think that this is just merely about me as a problem, or you can see the very obvious thing that this is an effort to take away our self-determination as a city, an effort to take away our ability to govern ourselves and make decisions based on what we think is best. I will never tell you that my administration has been successful in everything that we wanted to do. I will never tell you that there isn't a lot of work to be done. I will never tell you that you don't have any justification for having any issue with me whatsoever. I will tell you, whether you've been pleased with the work or whether you've been disappointed, I'm still your candidate because I'm not above reproach. I'm not above correction. I'm not above having a conversation when we don't necessarily agree and working and building on myself, right? And so I suggest that you'd rather leadership like that than leadership that doesn't have you in mind whatsoever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said, man. Well said, well said, well said. I know you got a lot going on. We'll give you an opportunity. And I wanted to delve a little bit more on Tuesday, but we'll do that at another time because I know you got work to do. I know you got doors to knock and people.
I'm not knocking on any doors this hour. That might not go well. But we do have work.
No, but I'll give you an opportunity to make a final plea tonight to vote.
Yeah. I'll simply say, as I said before, Othor, I'm not asking to continue as your mayor because I think I have all of the solutions, right? I'm doing so because I'm willing to submit myself to a collective genius process, believing that we're smarter together than we are independent of one another. I'm asking to do that so that we can continue as a city, as an entire city, in order to build a path forward. There are challenges, and I would ask that as you listen to the different platforms, that you listen to programmatic solutions. Don't tell me you're going to pave my roads. Tell me how you're going to pave my roads. Don't tell me that you're going to deal with public safety and just give the same spiel that, hey, we need to pay the police more. We've done that, but tell me what other investments you're going to make. Don't tell me you're going to deal with economic development in areas like South and West Jackson. Tell me the creative solutions that you're going to bring to bear in order to make those things happen. This city is worth it. I would love to continue to serve as your mayor, but you can rest assured that I will never, ever stop working for this city in any capacity that I'm able and God willing to do so. Thank you.
Mayor, thank you so much, man. We appreciate you being here. Thank you for showing your heart tonight. I really do appreciate it. I endeavor to give you an opportunity. Since Stephen O'Neill at the Manship said that I will likely show up on your campaign finance reports, right? Which is so absurd. But I endeavor to give you this platform to tell your story, man, because at the end of the day, it's about honesty. People want to dump all of Jackson's problems, right? All of our issues. People want to dump that under the indictment that you are under. And our problems far exceed that, right? Long before that. And so I will always be a person that represents truth and stand up for that, right? For that.
Can I give two more truthful things?
Oh, absolutely.
One, I'll be clear that I am not guilty of any wrongdoing. I can't go through the details because my legal team and a order from the judge prevents me from doing it. But I'm not guilty of any wrongdoing, right? The last thing that I will say, specific to our friend Stephen O'Neill, right? To have such a ferocious effort against me. You would think that he's not the person who called me when he had issues trying to get things set up for Aplos. You would think that he hasn't been able to call me for the various things that he's needed. And so I keep seeing people that call me time and time again that I've always been willing to go above and beyond to support, right? And it leaves me with the question, do you want somebody who will work with you, or do you want somebody who will give you everything, right? Because we have a large city, and all communities deserve to be supported, right? And so I've always, Stephen O'Neill has called me, his father has called me, right, about the needs that he's had, and we've always been responsive to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I was done when he attempted to take that incident after the St. Patrick's Day parade and laid that at your feet. I was like,
Yeah.
hold on, brother, no way. But I've known the guy 20 years, and I assume now that it's been a fake friendship because his true colors are showing.
Yeah.
But that's not here nor there. Mayor, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the discussion.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And guys, let me tell you something. These are the kinds of conversations that we endeavor to bring here on the Othor Cain Show. Real, honest conversations. People can sell you a bill of goods, right? None of this stuff is personal. I'll tell you this. I've been critical of Jeff Good in this election space. I dined in his restaurant for lunch today, right? It was a little awkward when he came over to speak to me, but we spoke because nobody takes it personal, right? It was a little awkward, but he knew that I'd never attacked him. As Stephen O'Neill said, it wasn't an attack, but that's what white people do, honestly. White people fall behind the word attack when they cannot argue facts, right? They hide behind the word attack when they cannot argue facts, right? Right? So when Jeff came over and spoke, right? Awkward at first, yeah, because it's been political discourse and disagreement. It's been disagreement, right? But at the end of the day, he's for Horn, I'm for Mayor Lumumba, period. Right? And it's okay to disagree without taking or removing your hood, Stephen O'Neill. And then to get on Facebook. And let me just tell you this. I do use that block feature for peace and to remove ignorance. Absolutely, I do. And that's why I did that. So I'm not going to go back and forth with you. Because you know what? You won't say it in my face. Right? Dorsey Carson? Say it in my face, man. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. When you can't argue facts, you say it's an attack, right? And CJ Lemaster, he's a friend of mine, but that post was irresponsible. It was absolutely irresponsible, and that's why I made that long post about context matters, right? You gotta give the whole story, and you just can't put something out there for people to just grab hold of, right? Yeah, Vicky, that's what that attack is. It's a deflection. It's absolutely. And so they use the word attack as a deflection because they can call out your flaws. Like, you know, we almost got to get out here, but let me just go to my inbox. Let me tell you what a white guy reached out to me and said to me, and this is what they do. This is what they do. This is what they do. So this white guy, he says, it saddens me that what you have done to Mr. O'Neill. He is a good man, and you know it. You are supposed to be a man of God, sir. Come on. Come on. My response to him, of which he did not respond, my response to him was this. It doesn't sadden you about what he did to me. If your answer is no, then are you a man of God? If your answer is no, then do you know the whole story? If your answer is no, then why did you really reach out to me? What did I do to him exactly? That was my response, right? Showed his colors, and I called him on it. And so when I stopped conforming to being the good black boy that conforms, that you can accept and deal with, and started questioning and pushing up against your racism, all of a sudden, I'm attacking you, and I'm attacking white people. Come on, man, give me a break. 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 Adrian, yeah, he knew what he was doing. He absolutely knew what he was doing. Absolutely knew what he was doing. And so, folks, let me just say this to you. it was a very disappointing turnout on Tuesday. Very disappointing to me. Very disappointing. You know, very disappointing. And I want you to look at this, right? I want you to look at this. If we don't vote, we can't complain, right? If we don't vote, we can't complain. We can't. We can't. If we don't vote, we can't complain. It's up to us. It's up to us. And that's why we got to get back out. We got to get out. We got to get out on the 22nd. We got to get out on the 22nd. I heard somebody in John's Gap say, you know, they can't take Jackson. Ain't nothing left. Everything is gone. But that's a lie from the pit of hell. That's a lie. That's a lie. Right? That's a lie. Let's be clear. We get to decide who our next mayor is. And all of you can do that. All of you can do that. I will take every nasty, untruthful comment about me. I stand tall and prideful with conviction. I do. I do. I do. Because a lie I will never represent. A lie I will never represent at all. At all. All right, good people. We've got work to do. We've got work to do. And so if only Stephen O'Neill could have seen Jeff Good and I this afternoon at Bravo, that probably would have crushed him. He probably would have had a panic attack. And then the other thing is, I know Stephen's history, long history. I'm not reminded him of that, but I could. But what's the point, right? I've not reminded him of that, but I could. But what would be the point? Because the truth does not need defending. You only have to defend a lie, right? Got to vote. Got to get out there on the 22nd. You got to get out there on the 22nd. Thank you, folks. I really, really appreciate you. I really appreciate you. We've got work to do. Let's make up some ground over these next 3 weeks, okay? Let's do it. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again.
We know he's gotten things done for Jackson.
Mayor Lumumba has a national profile, which it gives him the ability to do what he did when Jackson was facing the major water crisis.
He got something done. He got close to $1 billion from the federal government to do something that hasn't been done in decades.
He is literally in the best position to help lives, change lives, transform his community for the better, and improve the quality of life.
Mayor Lumumba has been a very consistent person, somebody who is very clearly loves the community that he serves, very clearly loves the people who he serves. He is carrying the needs of Jackson with him.
You have to have a mayor that's going to show up for the people, and Chokwe Lumumba shows up for the people every time.
Both of my men, stop playing.